Welcome to the brand new season of Two Pigs in a Pod, a podcast for the people of glazing by the people of glazing. I'm George Lewis, editor at the People in Glazing Society, or more commonly known as PiGs, and I'm your host. Really pleased to welcome on to the first episode of the new season, GGF Technical Officer and Training Manager, John Mannell. Welcome to the Two Pigs in a Pod, John.
Hi George, thanks for having me.
No,
not the sort of thing I would normally do. So
absolute pleasure to have you
yeah.
on.
No, it's great to be on, and appreciate all the stuff you've been doing over the last year as well at PIG. So pleased to be part of it.
No, pleased to have you on. So yeah, we'll jump straight into it with the first question, as we like to do on all our previous episodes, for you to explain who you are and what you do.
Well, so you've already said technical officer and training manager. So I've been at the GGF for over 3 years now. I joined as a technical officer, giving guidance to members. It's something previously in my old career that I used quite a lot. I used to come to the GGF for a lot of technical guidance, so it's good that I can now work here and help members as well. But obviously with the passion I've had for training and the need for not just training, but assessment and different kind of things around the competency landscape, there was sort of a need for me to put more of a focus on to training. So picked up training manager sort of middle of last year. And yeah, it's going to be a big challenge, but there's sort of a lot of exciting stuff coming up and on the horizon.
Right. And you said you worked alongside the GGF before you become part of at the GGF. So what was your first roles in the glazing sector, and what was your initial impressions of it?
So I come from a family who are deeply rooted in glazing. Right. My granddad set up a business in 1951, Apprentice Glass, who I worked for 17 years. Kind of fell into it a bit by accident though. So, you know, as a kid doing the photocopying in the summer holidays and licking the envelopes and putting the post out. And then leaving it for well over a decade. And then after university, really oddly got into stained glass through street art, which is a really weird link, but I saw the similarities in what I was doing with street art and stained glass. Anyway, so I went on a course at City and Guilds, which is just down the road from the GGF offices where I am now, and kind of fell in love with glass and joined the family business. Never intended to, and yeah, couldn't get away, and still haven't got away. I'm still in the sector. So yeah, worked there for many years, and the GGF was, you know, vitally important for me because I guess not coming or training in that background and then being part of a family business where you wear a lot of different hats, that guidance was really key. And, you know, technical wise, it was always a great resource, but also there were some real key people. Back in the day, there was a health and safety guy called Declan Moore, I believe. And, you know, he really helped me out. And then Phil Pinnington, again, he was another health and safety person and always gave us that guidance. So, yeah, when my boy was born, I wanted a new challenge and I joined the GGF. So, yeah, it's gone full circle, and hopefully now I can be helpful to members like the GGF was to me.
Nice.
So
nice. And I doubt there's not one person listening to this podcast or who don't know who the GGF are, but for the random person that might not know who the GGF are, can you briefly explain who they are and what they do within our industry?
Yeah, I guess in a weird way, quite often you get out what you put in. If you communicate with GGF, you can get huge amounts, and I was always really involved. So I guess you can get a bit more, I think, sometimes if you are an active member. But, you know, there's stuff for anybody. There's technical guidance, there's health and safety guidance. Lauren Morford, she's done an awesome job on creating the first IOSH managing safety course for our sector, and, you know, you get discounts and stuff, but good practice guides, etc. But the GGF is part of a huge group, and I guess a bit like all the different tools that you may need. So with RESA, with Fencer, BFRC, there's all these different group companies. So depending on what you do, the group as a whole can really support you as a business. But technical guidance for me was always the number one thing that I needed help on. But there's loads of different bits as well, networking events and things, technical meetings. There's a huge amount, but again, you can get benefits by just going on the website as a member, or you can get really involved, and I think you can get even more from it through collaborating in those sort of meetings. So.
And you said about the technical guidance, as even in the time that you've been there, do you feel like that's changed? Do you feel like the sector is changing in terms of the guidance that is, one, available, and two, that you're offering?
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit of a weird one because we are at a really interesting point. There's been lots of stuff, isn't there, in talking about competency and the Building Safety Act that come in, and I don't always like going back to Grenfell. That's had a massive impact on construction, and rightly so. But the building safety regulator that's come out of it, went to one of their events last year, and one of the things they spoke about was about consumer guidance. So I guess one of the big things the technical team are working on as well, it's not just about setting the bar in terms of good practice guides and stuff. It's about raising the floor. So if we can make consumers aware as well and give them a better understanding of what's needed, you kind of can raise the floor, and that will build into the infrastructure of providing better training resources. So there is a shift, but I think a lot of that's not just led by the GGF, it's led by expectations of industry, by its members. And that's kind of the beauty of it, really. We represent a lot of people, and most of them are very active members, which is fantastic. But I think it will always evolve because the demands from industry will change and the demands of members will change. And, so it's an exciting place for me to work, but there's a definite shift in what we've been doing in terms of technical guidance, particularly for consumers. But I guess it's just going to evolve more and more.
Yeah.
So,
and how hard is it to get that message to the consumer, to the people that are buying the products? That is it going to be a long sort of process to educate them? Like you said, you fell into the industry, so it's not sort of, not everyone knows about the glazing sector or the glass and glazing sector. So how hard is that to get that message through to them?
I'd say it's really hard, and it's not just consumers. We sort of, not being funny. I've got my phone in my pocket. I can get the answer to anything pretty much, but it's what you do with that information and whether that information is correct. And I think that's one of the real worries for our members is sometimes you can Google my piece of glass is shattered in my window. Type in a question to Google, up pops something which might not be correct. And that can be really dangerous for a business, because I think people, they can be informed but not always with the right stuff. So for me, going forward, the GGF will have to do more to provide resources for members that make sure that the consumer gets the right information. And I think that goes for training and stuff as well. Like, it's great that I've got that information in my pocket, but we need to make sure it's the right, and we kind of, I guess, help people. I mean, we have a technical inbox where consumers get in touch, and you see those common issues that homeowners have, and they're the consumer guidance documents we've started with. But there's always going to be niche stuff that pops up, and I guess that's part of our job. Thankfully, we've got a great team that are passionate about doing that. So, but it's just, for me, it will always evolve, and what we've maybe got to do next year won't be the same in 2 years' time. There could be legislation changes, and that's what it'll be. So
moving on to another thing that you said it, part of your job title is the training side, and I guess that to a certain extent the skills gap that I'm sure you hear, or the GGF hear constantly as we do. So what are GGF doing to bridge that skills gap, that that we can actually get new talent into the industry and actually train people up to be at the required level?
It's multifaceted, and it's not something that the GGF can do alone. So it is something which requires collaboration. I guess trying to go through some bits. One of the things I was really involved with the GGF before I was working here was apprenticeships. I do see them as key going forward. More so because in the curriculum, quite often, youngsters are encouraged to go on certain platforms and stuff. I think it's Unifrog, and that's built into the curriculum, and then they find out about apprenticeships. So, apprenticeships, I think, are key about drawing people to the sector. Um, for me, there needs to be a development of the apprenticeships for our sector. They've been good, but I think they could be better. But I think that's true for all training and probably stuff that I've worked on in the past as well. But things will always have to improve, and the expectations of youngsters needs to improve as well. So whilst we want to help, I guess, improve those, we also need to draw people. So we go to apprenticeship events. And also, they're called apprenticeship and further education events because apprenticeships are not the only answer.
Yeah.
So, well, we've got our skilled pathway scheme, which is slightly different. But you know, there's a lot of people in the sector that are competent but don't have qualifications. So we can't just focus on those new to the sector. We're going to have to help some people, maybe with a little bit of tuition, help get their qualifications, get their CSCS cards, grandfather rights. There's a lot of dispute that what it means, and I don't think you'll ever please everyone on that topic. But at the end of the day, the grandfather rights has ended, and we kind of, for me as a federation, we should be trying to look at how we can help some people get the qualifications they need to renew their CSCS cards.
Yeah.
So there's loads of challenges, and we're sort of working on a lot of them. Luckily, we've got a really good relationship with different bodies. CITB in Northern Ireland, we've been working with recently about training some of their candidates, and we've got Ian Young from Morn Windows. He's managed to get some candidates. We're going to develop a slightly new scheme out there. So there's a lot of people which are working and working really well, but we can't have one answer because everyone learns different. I mean, I can be a bit of a geek and sit there reading and going through walls of text, but you know, we've delivered a new online learning platform because a lot of people do not want to do that. They're used to short snippets of information now, and we've got to change how people can learn. So, yeah, I mean, I'm doing a very good job at rambling on at every single question, but the fact is there is no one thing we can focus on. We do have to try and build something with other people that's part of the movement, and like building our skills is a prime example of that. I think I work really well with Mark. Mark's done an absolute great job, as has Chris Globe. And you know, if we work together, we can achieve what we need a bit more quickly than if we try to do it on our own.
Yeah, we will definitely move on to a question about building our skills later on, but you know, you obviously mentioned about the skill pathway scheme and Grace, you know, that was something that you launched, or the GGF launched last year. Can you explain what those are for those that don't know, and you know why they should be potentially looking at them as for their company?
Yeah, so skill pathways is an interesting one because I've sort of said the importance of apprenticeships, and in many ways, skill pathways, I guess, is quite similar to an apprenticeship. The difference is not everybody can access an apprenticeship. So if you're self-employed working for a company, you know, there can be issues around funding, and I'm sure there's changes which are happening and stuff to make them more accessible. But particularly in the world of stained glass, which is where I started, studios often can't guarantee someone employment for the duration of a 3-4 year apprenticeship in stained glass. So there's not many people that have taken that apprenticeship up, yet it's an amazing apprenticeship. And there's those sort of challenges. So skill pathways was set up kind of in response to that, as seeing how can we give training to those in an apprenticeship style. And it's not an apprenticeship because it's not government backed, but you get a recognised qualification in your skill set. And we've had, you know, Ben Hill from Leicester Glass was the first candidate, who was awesome. He set the bar so high that it's going to be really hard to try and get other people. But Skill Pathways is there to provide a framework that people can learn over roughly 2 years. It's not, I don't like the idea of time served, whilst that has a place. it should be more on competency gain. So if someone accelerates and learns really
Yeah.
quickly, you wouldn't really want to slow them down because they could lose interest. And equally, someone that struggles, you're not going to penalise them for taking longer. So that's how that works. And because that's been difficult to upscale because of the platform and stuff we've been using, we've actually launched a new platform which is called GGF Training, and that's been in partnership with Nucleus. And you mentioned Grace. Grace is one character. She's a tutor that we use that is that common reference point for people that go through the learning content. And Grace stands for Glazing Resources and Career Education. And the whole point is that through storytelling, we can help deliver training which is easier to digest and understand. And Grace is part of that. So what we plan to do is the skill pathway content we're going to transfer over to the new platform, which will make it much more widely accessible and hopefully at some point not just be accessible through skill pathways, but if you're in a traineeship within a company and you want to access certain modules, or even if you was on an apprenticeship, that apprenticeship provider might want to use some of our resources potentially. I guess just from our point of view, we have to do what we can to maximise accessibility to training, and that's not going to be easy. No. But it's a challenge that I've got the baton for, so it's something that we've got to pick up and run with, I think.
Yeah, and will you keep in touch with these people that go on to the skill pathway scheme, for example? Will you keep in touch with them to sort of show the success post scheme? Is that important for the GGF to not only to help them whilst they're on it, but actually to promote the industry as a whole and promote the scheme once they finish it?
Yeah, it is, and I think we're quite lucky because the candidates that we've had are really engaging. We gave the example of Ben Hill from Leicester Glass, sort of giving him a massive shout out twice now. But he is really engaging, and actually he's even looking at some of the learning content that we're transferring over to the new platform for his feedback, because he's had to suffer through the more archaic system, which very much was walls of text. So we're getting his feedback, but also the sort of learning platform, we're sort of focusing initially on installers and fabricators, and whether that be fabricating frames or glass processing. We want to move up sort of different job roles, and we've sort of the category for that we're based around Bloom's taxonomy. So depending on what authority level you have within decision-making processes and stuff is how we're going to structure the program. So we would hope in a couple of years, we've got learning content and training content that Ben can use to develop himself. Yeah. So it's really important we keep those relationships, not just so someone can progress, but like you say, we've got a success story, because some people will happily join the sector, do the same job role, but some people will join the sector because they want to progress into something different.
Yeah.
And if we leave a dead end, I think that's a real challenge to attract people to our sector, because kids are smart, aren't they? Like, they get, I think they probably get some better access to career advice than perhaps I had. So their expectations of an employer are going to be higher, potentially. So if you can't show them where they might go, that might be the difference between them joining you or our sector, let's say, than another sector. And that is a big part of the piece that I think the GGF are going to have to look at over the coming years.
Yeah, and it's important, isn't it, that there is that career progression for whatever, not necessarily in our sector, but there are so many people in our sector that have sort of stayed in here and progressed up through from sort of the bottom to the top, owning the company or CEO, whatever it may be. That we've had people on here before that have sort of worked their way up, and I guess it is important to have that proof that the proof is in the pudding, as such, that there are success stories in our industry.
And there are loads. And that's what's, I think sometimes our sector still suffers from this sort of, I don't even like the thing when people go on about the white gold thing, because I think that's so far from where we are now. But there is I guess construction as a whole, there can be sometimes sort of negative views on certain
Yeah,
trades and things like that. But actually, you get into some of our members and the innovative products that they
yeah,
produce. It is amazing. Like it really is incredible, and we don't celebrate that enough. So yeah, I guess it is something as a sector we can do better, but it isn't hard to find some awesome stories which get people excited about our sector, I think.
yeah. And so there's so many roles as well, isn't there? I don't think people. I'm sure you, when you've had conversations at events and things like that, that they probably don't know. You know, school kids, college kids, that they don't know how many different kind. You know, obviously, from my point of view, work in the media, but for in the glazing sector,
Yeah.
you know, there is so many varied roles that if you like a certain part of a job, you probably will find it in our sector somewhere.
Yeah, and that's for me. We mentioned building our skills already, but that's one of the real for me. And I'm not sure. I'll say I'm going to reference Mark here because he's done a fantastic
Yeah,
job. But I'm sure it was more than Mark that come up with the careers families. But at an apprenticeship event, for me, that is amazing because it doesn't. You know, if someone comes to speak to me and says, "I want to get into marketing," just as an
yeah,
example, I've got some really cool examples of where marketing can take you within our industry. And they've got all these different careers, families, and you know whether it be working in a factory, whether it be an accountant, marketing, like I said, working on site, all these different roles. At an apprenticeship event, I think historically the GGF would have just focused on installers, glass processors, fabricators, but that isn't what makes the industry
yeah,
move. And you know, just look at my career and some of the key people that have been involved in some of the projects I've done. Um, those people have been involved in an output, which is you know a finished product, a glazed product, a shop front, whatever. But you know, there's been logo design, structural engineers, obviously accountants and
yeah,
stuff all get involved. And there's always a place. So like when I go to an apprenticeship event now, I have a you know where different apprenticeships exist. So if someone comes to me and they want to be an accountant, you know our industry needs accountants. We might not have a job role that's available at the
yeah,
moment, but I can point them to the apprenticeship page, the government page. I can show them what apprenticeships are available, which colleges near them are delivering those sort of training, and you know the GGF has got a jobs board, which for me seems massively underutilized. But what can be really good if I go to an apprenticeship event and there's a potential accountant of the future who's at that event, if our members were to use that jobs board and say, you know, we want to enroll a trainee accountant, I could almost link that candidate there and then to that
yeah,
company. And that's something for me that's brilliant. But yeah, the industry itself is far more than just installers, like you say.
yeah.
You know, who would have thought that, I don't know, you would have ended up being people with glazing
Exactly,
and
exactly.
having the painful 30 odd minutes with me. But you don't, that's the thing. Like, I never expected to be in this sector,
Yeah,
and then I got hooked. And, you know, I think a lot of people, when they get in, do struggle to get out
yeah,
because, you know, it is a good industry.
yeah. I mean, we
Um,
hear it on pretty much every episode. You know, I said it on my episode. You're saying it in this episode. You know, about falling into the industry. Obviously, you had a bit of a background knowledge of the industry, but kind of fell into it. But you know, there's we said before, there's got to be a reason why everyone stays. You know, there's people that have been in this industry 20, 30, 40, 50. You know, like a long time, and there's got to be
yeah.
that reason why they're staying here. You know, they could have easily, especially nowadays, you know, you can change career, do to a completely different industry. That, you know, if we can just bottle that up and say this is
Yeah,
why why they're staying, then you know we might get somewhere with this skill shortage and you know getting the new people into the industry.
yeah. It's not an easy challenge.
No,
We had a really good meeting in at CITB Northern Ireland for the Irish members at the end of last year, a joint regional meeting. But something really profound that was said at the meeting was we've not just got a skill shortage. There is actually a people
Yeah.
shortage, and that's true for construction as a whole. And the only way I think that some of this will be dealt with is, I think you've mentioned before, we spoke before we got on the proper call and stuff, but like transferable skills and stuff, we're going to have to attract people from other
Yeah.
sectors, because it's, it's not just about getting new people in, or young people in, sorry, it's about getting new people in from other sectors. And that's not an easy thing to do. But you say, if we can bottle those cool stories, it's a good start, isn't it, to where we can go.
Yeah, and moving on to talk about the industry in general. Obviously, I know you would have probably had the conversations like we have about a tough year last year for a lot of companies, and it's looking tough for a lot in at the start of this year. But sort of from the early conversations you've had, what does the industry look like from your point of view? And is there any sort of shining lights that we can sort of take and run with for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like to try to be optimistic with
Yeah,
that sort of thing. Obviously, some of the changes that happened last year in the budget and stuff will be tough for some companies, because it's a big additional pressure on the wage bill with national insurance and stuff. But at challenging times like this, yes, it is going to be tough, but you always hear those success stories, don't you, of people thriving and things like that. And we are I can't say anything here today that will make next year, I think, easier for people in terms like financially, but in terms of what's happening in the sector, there is loads of optimism. So like sustainability and stuff, there's some great stories, and again that attracts youngsters in, because quite often they want to work in a more sustainable sector. There's some great stuff that's happening around glass recycling. There's obviously been a lot of work on UPVC and aluminium in the past, but there's a lot more stuff with that. With glass futures, it's really exciting. Look at glass production and things which are more sustainable in terms of energy usage and stuff. So that's really cool. I think we spoke as well about mental health and stuff before the phone call today. There's a lot more positive stuff that's been done on that in the last few years, and that's had a huge negative impact on our sector with lost work days and stuff. I think there is much more of a voice and acceptance that needs to be dealt with. So that's a positive. And also, the industry is constantly evolving. There's new products, and it's, for me, the sector has always continued to evolve. I guess I've worked through different recessions and I've seen how things can be tough. But when you come out the other side, there is always, for me, sort of, there is exciting times ahead. And I know it's been tough, and it would be completely insincere and inappropriate, I think, for me to be like, oh, it's going to be great, because at the moment we are looking for some of that optimism around the economy, around construction, but even around training and this real, that you can see through things like LinkedIn, can't you? You can see the industry coming together, you can see the voices unify, and you can see all different organisations working with one another. I do think that going forward, the strength together will be much more exciting. And I know with government advocacy and stuff, and Chris Bedell in that role, the GGF, he's got his own challenges, but also our link to government has been better than it has before at the GGF. So, as building regulations and stuff change, which they continue to do and will do, I think we're in a better position as an industry than we were before to deal with those challenges.
Yeah.
If any of that makes sense, who knows? But
And do you think that the GGF can be that sort of forefront? Where you obviously you have a lot of members that talk, that are in this industry, and you've got that route up to right to the top in government. That actually you can be that company, that organisation that actually brings everyone together and gives that sort of one voice.
yeah, and I think the one voice thing you just said, what I never fully appreciated when I was a member, because you very much I say you, but I very much got involved with what affected me as a member company. But we've got, all the way from float manufacturer to fabricators, glass processors, installers, specialist installers, consumer recycling, engineers, all sorts. All of that is within our
Yeah.
membership base. And actually, that voice is really important because it's representing how, if something changes, what impact that will have
Yeah.
elsewhere. And I don't think I ever fully really understood how amazing it is that we've got that as membership until I joined, because not only will it improve us because you've always got all of those voices, but you genuinely have to do what's best for the
Yeah.
sector. And yeah, it's quite a big,
Yeah,
facet.
it's the pressure's on, isn't it? Really, to be
Yeah,
that voice.
we sort of joked that we've not got one boss, we've got our members,
Yeah,
if you like, and I really believe in that because I think we are there to help them, and I guess because I haven't given a positive outcome in terms of economy because I don't have a crystal ball and I'm not an economist, but the work around competence, the work around sustainability, innovation, changes in building regulations, thermal performance of buildings and stuff. For me, it's quite exciting what's going to come
yeah.
ahead.
I think it's
And
important, just generally, not even talking about our sector, that bad news or negative news makes the headlines, much more than the positive stuff. So actually, to put it
yeah,
out there and say, this is what we've got going for us. This is some of the good stuff. It's important, to just as important to put those out there
yeah,
and talk about them, as well
yeah,
as the harder stuff, which we have to talk about as well.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I think for me, I certainly, like I said, I've got a big
Yeah,
challenge, which is predominantly going to be focused around training. But even that's exciting because that's not just looking at the background I come from. I'm working in fabrication and stuff now with certain content, which I didn't do before in regards to making frames and
yeah.
that. So, for me, it's going to be a really exciting few years because I think the base of what we're trying to produce will really support the industry going forward.
No. Yeah, and lastly, obviously, you say you go to lots of events and apprenticeship events and things like that. How do you sell it to them? People might not know anything about the industry, like what we did when we started. We knew not a lot. Like how do you say, come to us? It'll be worth it.
Yeah, well, one thing I'll never do is sort of lie to them
Yeah,
that it's going to be easy. The first question I ever get asked is, "How much can you earn, and how hard do I have to work?" And whatever sector you go into, unless you're an extremely part of an extremely small percentage of people, you're going to have to work extremely
yeah,
hard to earn good money, to earn very good money. But you can earn really good money, and when I go to these apprenticeship fairs, it probably sounds kind of self-indulgent, but I can only really explain my background and my
yeah,
story. And as I say, weirdly, through street art, getting into stained glass,
yeah,
getting into the flat glass industry, and then getting drawn back into some of the historical buildings in the country and doing some of that stuff. Standing, and I never forget, a couple of years ago at a London regional meeting, we had a networking event at the Shard afterwards, and we stood there as London region members, looked at the skyline, and yes, maybe we didn't put all of the glass in originally, but through emergency glazing, replacement, plan work, we, as a group of people, looked across that skyline and was like, we've
yeah,
worked in all of these
yeah,
buildings. And it was one of the coolest
yeah.
moments, realizing what an impact, a relatively small group of members has,
Done it.
helped
Done.
sustain that London skyline.
Yeah,
So when I go to these events, I sort of tell my story because it's been quite varied, and I guess I didn't expect to end up where I am now, but that's been part of the excitement of
mm,
it. So but again, we get other people to those events. So we had Julie from Parega, an engineering company. She's really passionate about apprenticeships, and she come along to our last apprenticeship event and tell the stories of them. And it's really key. So that at these events, we welcome members, even non-members. We welcome people to come along and represent the sector, because the more positive stories we get, the better. And you don't just need John Mannell's story
yeah,
because I'm one part of a massive puzzle. We need as many as possible. And I might use this while we're recording to try get you along to the next one
Yeah,
and you commit to one. So
absolutely. Yeah, like like as you said, we're building our skills. We were there last year, and it was just like that there were so many different parts of the glazing sector that when I was speaking to Mark and he said, "Oh, like you are part of the glazing industry," and I sort of thought to myself, as pigs and previously on magazines, like actually like I kind of I'm a different part of the sector, but actually just a part of the glazing sector as well, which I didn't really sort of weirdly didn't think about that until he said it. You are just as much as part of the industry as a fabricator and installer, like GGF, like whoever it may be. We're all like our bits of the industry.
yeah, we spoke about it before, but you are, and some of the networking opportunities and stuff that connects people, it's massively important. So, yeah, without a doubt, you are, and you know, quite often I think some people devalue what they do, and I'm massively guilty of that day to day. But we're all cogs of a system, aren't we?
Yeah,
And if you remove a vital cog, however unvital you may see it
yeah,
yourself, that stops turning. A lot of stuff can stop turning. So I guess, yeah, not devaluing what anyone does, but making sure people realise, however small a cog they think they are, they're still needed to get stuff done. And that's what's really cool,
yeah.
People, people in glazing are, aren't
Yeah,
they? It's a
that's it. That
cog that
and me from my personal, like I've been in the industry, 7, 8 years now, and I haven't ever worked on the shop floor. I haven't ever done that sort of role, but
yeah,
I'm just as passionate about promoting the industry and from the media point of view to get those stories out there. And I think
yeah.
we're from Pig's point of view, we're definitely happy to tell our story and to try and even if we get sort of one person in, you're doing that right of promoting it promoting our industry in a good light.
Yeah, no, and it's key. We get those voices, and I guess time's going on, so I won't keep going on about it. But we do need all those different voices to keep things going.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Right.
we'll jump on with our final bit of the podcast before we let you give a shout out. We'll just do a quick fire questions where we ask you a few things to get to know John. So we'll start off. Do you prefer talking over email or by phone?
By phone.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, I can't sing at all. It would be an Oasis number,
No.
I would imagine. Even though I'm not the biggest Oasis
Yeah.
fan, but I imagine drunkenly that would be probably what I would do.
Have you got a favorite TV show or a movie that you would go to if you when you have a day off?
Favorite TV program was Utopia, which was a Channel 4
Yeah.
program a while back. So yeah, that would be my favourite one.
No. And when do you feel most in the zone? Are you a person that gets up early, go for a run, and ready to go in the morning, or you working late at night to when everyone's asleep?
A bit of both. I have actually got more into running and stuff.
Nice.
I guess I work better in the morning, if I'm perfectly
Okay.
honest. So
And lastly, in a year's time, where do you see yourself in terms of GGF and your role? Like, how do you see it in a year's time if we were to come back on this podcast? Where do you hope things are?
I would really like to see a clear vision going forward where the GGF can support whatever route to competency. Like I said before, at the moment we've got skilled pathways and we do help people on certain qualifications, but to make sure that if you're a youngster and you don't want to sign up to a 2-year apprenticeship course, we can still help you get to where you need to be.
Nice.
So, yeah, make sure we start offering more in terms of different routes to becoming competent.
Nice. And for our final bit of the podcast, we like to give our guests a chance to shout out people. It can be people from the industry, out of the industry, wife, kids, whoever it may be. So feel free to jump on it and just to say who you want to shout out quickly.
So, just I guess a couple of people. It sounds a bit like I'm brown nosing, but my boss Dave Borland last year, I had a really tough year. There's a lot of troubles that happened sort of personally last year, and he's been an amazing support. So a big shout out to Dave. And also one which you probably wouldn't necessarily expect it, but Faye Burnett from Mace, who's led the working group 2 stuff around competence. I think she was aware I had a bit of a tough year. She's had to badger me to get stuff done, but she's been absolutely amazing. And I think she's been a big cog going forward in regards to competence for improving for our sector. So shout out to Faye.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks very much, John, for joining us on Two Pigs in the Pod today. It was really interesting to hear, obviously, about your unique journey into the industry and what you're doing with it with the GGF, which is exciting time.
No, yeah, well, thanks for having me, George. But no, I really appreciate your time, and yeah, hopefully we get to catch up soon. Anyway,
Yeah.
so.
Well, that's it for today. So I hope you can join us for another episode soon. You can find John's episode and all the others on our YouTube channel, on our website, www.peopleinglazing.co.uk, or wherever you get your podcast from. So once again, thanks to John for joining us, and see you again soon.